What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
And technique. This car in its time was born with one bad feeling: envy. Honda envied the domination in the E-Class of the Germans. First of all, we are talking, of course, about Mercedes-Benz and BMW. The Japanese really wanted to compete with them, and in 1985 the first Honda business class appeared. Its main difference from the Germans is front-wheel drive. And the disadvantage at that time were relatively weak atmospheric engines: V6, 2.0-liter, 145 horsepower, and 2.5-liter, 165 horsepower, and not the richest equipment. Honda realized that 145 horsepower is ridiculous, and in Europe such cars were not sold at all. There they appeared in 1987, and only with 2.5-liter engines. In the USA, Legend was sold under Acura brand. The situation with motors was partially corrected in 1988, replacing the 2.5-liter engine with a 2.7-liter unit, 180 horsepower. A year later, the car was equipped with a 2-liter turbo engine with an output of 190 horsepower. The list of options was also constantly expanding, but serious competition to Mercedes and BMW did not turn out. After all, the Japanese saloons did not reach the German ones, and the size of the Legend was modest. The situation had to be changed by appearance of the next generation. And here in the second generation, released in 1990, engineers and designers of Honda showed themselves in all its glory. Firstly, this Legend became much bigger. In length it reached almost 5 meters, partly due to the fact that the second generation was to conquer America, and no one ever liked small cars there. Secondly, on the second generation of the Legend there was no choice of motors, but the one offered to buyers was very good: V6 with a volume of 3.2 liters, from 215 to 235 horsepower. The tradition not to torture potential owners with the choice of engines was preserved on subsequent generations. Finally, there was a fully independent suspension of all 4 wheels, each of which stood on 2 levers. It allowed to increase controllability and at least somehow to approach to German competitors. The third generation, 1996 to 2000, was conceptually and technically close to the second, but the hero of our publication, Legend of the fourth generation, turned out to be more interesting. Yes, there was no choice of engines and transmissions here, only V6 with 3.5 liters and 295 horsepower before restyling in 2008, and 3.0 Tandem, 7 liters and 300 horsepower after, in both cases with AKP5. But here the design has changed radically. Honda has ceased to squat in curtsy before burgers and has made something strange: firm Honda aggressive automobile, but business class. It turned out to be both bold and monumental at the same time. The sizes are not small: 4985184514450mm with a base of 2800 mm. Inside, leather, wood, and a lot of everything. And thus, firm all-wheel drive SHAWD with a planetary reducer in a drive on a back axis which could include a raised gear if necessary. It was controlled by electronics, which at the same time distributed torque to each wheel separately. As a result, it turned out to be a very cheerful sedan, allowing the driver not only to drive with a maximum speed of 250 km per hour and gaining the first 107.1s, but also doing all this excitement and quite safe. And, of course, with all this, Legend remained a typical business class with all pluses. It is even a pity that this car did not become popular in Russia. There are many reasons: high initial cost, and 295 crazy from the point of view of tax, horses, and image of Honda, little connected in minds of our people with business class. However, we will talk about all these reasons below. Let me start, perhaps, with a quote that explains everything: Legend has a lot of pluses. And the main one on the secondary market is that they were sold in Russia in one very cool configuration. It's not Germans, for which the first owner didn't have enough money for extras. Yes, it's simple: there were no empty versions in Russia. You could say there were none at all, but we had only one. So, a new car was taken from the showroom at once well stuffed. And there are no drums on the secondary market for the same reason. So they write in reviews that the set has everything you need. But not always. Many people do not like absence of standard front parktronic, the dimensions are not small and this thing would be useful. And also in Legend it will not be possible to carry floorboards, seats of a back row are not folded. Though probably nobody carries floorboards in this car. They drive and are happy with what they have. The fact that Legend is a terrible liquid is not immediately thought about. At first they are happy that it can be bought on the secondary market not too expensive, and then they realize that it can't be sold on the secondary market, only to amateurs. On the other hand, this car is not interesting for car thieves, who can steal it, only having confused it with a Accord at night. Because nobody really needs Legend. Why? There's a lot of reasons. Some say it's not easy to sell because it's a rare model. That's not quite right. It would be more accurate to say that no one likes the tax for 295 horsepower and someone is frightened by the cost of maintaining this car. In general, only one thing is true, it will be difficult to sell the Legend later. There is no one who would be left indifferent by comfort of Legend. Frankly speaking, the reason for love in the segment of business class is very banal, but where to go if it is there? We will have to talk about it. The owners like everything, from seats to illuminations. You can't help believing that if you compare all sedans of this class, the Legend has no equals. Europe stands aside because it has everything we need and the quality that Europe cannot give us. This review was written under the strong influence of Honda, so it is somewhat incoherent and rambling. But further the author tries to make some analysis, pleasant bluish illumination, cozy driver's seat, gently picked me up under my aching lower back, in which I sat down and did not want to crawl out. Yeah, guys. I have sat in different cars before, but I have never experienced such a high in any car. Most of all owners like chairs, though there are almost no claims to ergonomics, sometimes they curse the head unit of multimedia system, but nothing but it. So here the following quotation will be a classic: in a salon everything is at hand, in spite of a scatter of buttons on a torpedo and a beard. Everything is electrically driven, the driver's seat is also with memory for two pilots, seat, steering wheel, mirrors outside. You sit very comfortably, the car as if embraces you, no, not envelops you, but embraces you, tenderly and affectionately. I would like to note that rear passengers are also satisfied with the comfort. First of all, thanks to the space on the rear sofa, it is very comfortable for passengers in the back, even if their height is more than 190. Probably it should be so in business class, even if it is a Honda one. Here's where it's a bit strange. There is not a single review in which anyone dared to reproach the car for the unreliability of the automatic. There's nothing wrong with that. But the speed of Honda automatics is always a reason for a little dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction is expressed in different words. Someone says straightforwardly, the automatic is a bit dull. Somebody tries to express the idea in a little more detail, adaptive automatic often misunderstanding, sometimes treacherously. Dull, 5-speed box hesitates when switching on the first gear. In fact, the reason for the algorithm of the box operation, which is not clear to everyone, is hidden a little deeper. 5 stages, all-wheel drive and 3.5-liter engine, all this is made for manufacturers and sellers of gasoline and not for those who like to save on fuel. In order to somehow reduce consumption, engineers have adjusted the box so that it goes to higher gears as early as possible. But Honda engine at low speeds does not behave in the best way, it likes to spin. As a result, the compromise between dynamics and consumption is very difficult to find, the car either does not go or goes, but consumes a lot of gasoline. One of commentators wrote correctly, the automatic transmission all the time throws elevated to save money, fans of chasing will not like it, but it is worth to transfer to manual mode, the situation changes, the car does not dull from low and switches to elevated. Without your intervention. All this looks like that, but many people consider the box to be to blame for all this. Unfairly, probably, but this opinion exists. Well, sometimes you can read about some glitches of the automatic transmission selector sensor. No one talks about it in detail, but in a couple of negative reviews about boxes such a phrase is found. There's probably nothing to talk about. Honda is Honda. Just a few quotes: nothing sharply breaks and does not fall off, everything is very reliable, very. In general, the car inspires a feeling of infinite reliability, mileage 170,000 kilometers. Gentlemen, you will laugh. But except for 2 burned-out bulbs of button illumination on the beard, there are no malfunctions. Honda does not break. I can't see any alternative to the legend. Honda doesn't break down at all. And even after 170,000 miles, Honda still doesn't break down. I will not copy here half of solemn cries and rapturous cries for Honda, everything is already clear. I'm just jealous, honestly. But there are a lot of questions about the quality of the interior. First of all, the leather, which loses its look very quickly. The quality of the leather is such that the seats do not lend themselves well to cleaning. The car is only 2 years old, and the seats look as if they were 8 years old. No dry cleaner, even the most professional, expensive and cool one, can bring the seats back to pristine condition. A lot of people complain that with rapid wear and tear, the driver's seat starts to instantly look different from the rest of the seats, and it really spoils the look of the interior. In addition, the armrest rubs very quickly, which spoils the picture even more. The armrests on the driver's side wear out quickly. In the cabin, the fasteners of the rear sofa often come off. I should note that on photos of this car on the internet you can really see visibly worn chairs and armrests. And it looks ugly. Buttons and leather on a steering wheel are also quite noticeably rubbed. Apparently, there is indeed a problem with interior materials, and it is a shame. However, at the same time, some people noted that at the mileage of 100,000 the interior could look new. But now where to find legend of this generation with such mileage? How ruthless time is. Of course, we should say something about the all-wheel drive, but I have put it in a separate paragraph. And now we will talk not only about it, but also about suspensions, steering and everything else that affects handling. And Legend's handling, judging by reviews, is fantastic. One of the owners was not even lazy to compare it with other cars. It steers and it drives super. It handles better than a 91 Toyota Sprinter, a 1992 Toyota Celica, a 1993 Mitsubishi Diamante, and 1988 Prelude. These were the cars I drove for over a week around my native Vladivostok. The Legend handles better than the 91, 95, 97 and 2006 Civic, Accord SS7 Coupe. Better than the new Corolla and Avensis, better than the 7 BMW, better than the 5 BMW, better than all my rental cars, from Stratus to Mondeo, combined. I have kept the spelling and punctuation copyrighted to show how the steering of the Legend affects the brain of an untrained person. Some features of Legend, for example, the cost of spare parts or fuel consumption, are evaluated differently. Mostly, of course, negatively, but sometimes they try to defend them. But everyone speaks about handling only in a major tone. Even those who hate pyropatrons, which in case of a small accident shoot off the hood, breaking the windshield, and then require $200,000 to restore it to factory condition. Even haters of Legend praise it for its ability to stand on the road and fit into any turns. The steering is excellent, as on rails. Intelligent all-wheel drive controls the process and leads the car where you directed it. Especially many people are happy that Legend perfectly goes both at 130 km per hour and 230. On the highway this car is especially good. On the highway it goes very clearly and confidently, does not jump, does not yaw. The cardan is made of carbon fiber, so you can go 230 without pain, if the road allows it. Well, what it has to do with carbon fiber cardan is not quite clear, but the fact remains it is possible to go fast. But it is not always necessary, because together with fuel consumption, oil consumption grows. Yes, the Legend's engine can eat a lot of oil at high revs. But nobody cares because, A, it's a Honda, B, it's super fast. Let's start with a quote here too. Those who write that it eats 15 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and 8 to 9 in the countryside are lying, to put it mildly. The real consumption in the city in summer is 17 to 18 L 100 kilometer and in winter 19 to 22 L, and this is provided that the car is in good order. On a highway, of course, it is possible to achieve somewhere 9-9.5, but on condition that you go in a pensioner mode 90 to 110 km per hour on absolutely level and practically empty highway without rises and turns and without any small mal acceleration. If you drive in normal mode with accelerations, overtaking and within 120 to 180, the consumption will be the 11th of May, 13 liters. These figures seem to be the closest to reality. They are called more often than others. Yes, the Legend's consumption is not the smallest. But it is necessary to feed 295 horses with something, so everything is within the limits of decency. Moreover, the car has a constant full drive, and it also does not increase economy in any way. But Legend, as you already know, super drives. Not everyone likes all-wheel drive. Some people find it easier to drive a car with front-wheel drive, others think that rear-wheel drive behaves more logically. But many people are afraid of all-wheel drive because of its unpredictability. But if we are talking about Honda, you can forget about unpredictability. Here everything is exactly on the contrary. The firm drive SHAWD works perfectly and simply does not give an opportunity to make a fatal mistake. Its advantages are correctly described here. The main plus of the Legend is the drive. All-wheel drive SHAWD, which transfers the torque between the rear and front axles from 30 to 70 to 70 to 30%. And at the same time can supply up to 100% of the rear axle torque to the outside wheel in a corner, without any braking of the inside wheel instantly. The author went overboard with the exclamation points, but it's essentially correct. The main advantage of this drive is that the car can stand on different surfaces with all four wheels, but will not go somewhere to the side. And, of course, it makes any driver feel like a racer. All-wheel drive SHAWD constantly provokes to press down in a corner instead of slowing down. Sometimes it can also save the day. A couple of times, the clever electronics and all-wheel drive helped get us out of accidents. Once in the dark and on ice. I think if I had been in another car, I would have had a major accident. This Honda Legend is doing so well. What's its main drawback? Yes, keeping a Legend isn't something everyone can afford. It would be only gasoline consumption, but no. There is also tax and the cost of spare parts. They write quite rightly about the tax. Well, the tax, of course, for 295 horsepower is a horse's ass. And often this is followed by a swear word against the government. There is nothing to say. Only if we defend Legend, it is not her fault for our taxes. There are questions for others. But spare parts are, of course, a pain. There are several problems with them at once. Original ones, they are expensive, rare and have few analogues. That is why some owners on the internet cry. The main disadvantage, and perhaps the only one I have encountered, is very expensive and hard to find spare parts. Before Honda I had Mercedes. They were cheaper in maintenance. Comparison with Mercedes is not just for a reason. Honda wanted to become a competitor to Germans in this class and became one. Spare parts cost. The Bavarian 3S smoking nervously. It is really easier to buy spare parts for a fighter plane. However, now there are more and more analogues and the cost of maintenance is slightly reduced. But not always. If you buy a shabby Legend, you can get a little crazy about the cost of its reanimation. And since their mileage is already high, the chances of buying wood are very high. Although here it is difficult not to agree with another owner of Legend, I am glad that it does not break, but only crashes. Optimism is our everything. In conclusion, the Honda Legend 4 presents a compelling case for both potential buyers and those who may want to reconsider. On one hand, its impressive reliability, advanced technology, and luxurious features make it an attractive option for many. However, factors such as its higher maintenance costs, limited availability, and potential depreciation should not be overlooked. Ultimately, the decision to buy or not to buy hinges on individual priorities and preferences. Weighing these 5 reasons carefully will help you make an informed choice that aligns with your needs. Thank you for watching, and we hope this video has provided valuable insights into the Honda Legend 4.